staying on this topic, an interesting tweet came out this week from Adam Stern and the Sports Business Journal. Kyle Larson, the leading NASCAR driver in merchandise sales halfway through the 2025 regular season. That's news to a lot of us, so I think assumed that Chase Elliott will be there once again. But if you take a look at the list attached in the article, the number one slot just the NASCAR brand, but then among active drivers, Kyle Larson has overtaken Chase Elliott. And look at who is 8th through 10th on the list there as well. Dale Earnhardt Jr., who is still racing in late models, of course, but has been retired from full-time competition for several years now. Justin Allgaier, the Xfinity Series driver we were just talking about, and Dale Earnhardt Sr. in the mix there as well in the top 10. Matthew responded to this, also ranking ahead of the drivers he lists below in a tweet that he was following up on, is one of Junior's Xfinity drivers, Justin Allgaier. I think Major League Baseball would likely have an issue if a AAA player ranked higher than revenue sales than Freddie Freeman, Paul Skeens, or Francisco Lindor. This was him following up to making a note of Earnhardt Sr. and Jr. being ranked ahead of a two-time Daytona 500 winner, the only driver from Mexico, both of Michael Jordan's drivers, a driver that won 3 straight races this year and a 50-plus race winner, and yet no one admits that this sport has an Earnhardt problem. So that's our friend Matthew Owens. I see Tanner Smith has joined us here once again. But Brandon, I'll go to you first again on this one. Do you see a problem with NASCAR having 2 non-active drivers and one of their second-tier series drivers in the Xfinity Series ranked that high on the merchandise sales list?
Well, if we want to compare it to stick and ball, which the precedent is here, that we already talked about baseball there, I can see if the NBA had merchandise haulers outside the arena, I would venture to say there's probably 2 or 3 dedicated to Kobe Bryant, to Michael Jordan, to all of those legendary greats. And so, it's that those have their place, right? Like it's okay to have a Dale Jr. and a Dale Sr. at every weekend, even if they're not active drivers. But that, it is a problem with kind of how high they rank up there. And I know we're specifically talking about Justin Allgaier being 9th in that ranking there, and how he essentially is a AAA affiliate of Hendrick Motorsports. So, which is the New York Yankees. So, it all circles around. But yeah, that is a little bit of an issue, and it's kind of a longer problem of the big retirement age of the late 2010s into, well, actually early 2010s into, all through the 2010s. We had so many legends and Hall of Famers retire all around the same time. Boom, 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 boom. And it was like 2018 when we were just looking around and like all these young faces and no one to lead them, and we're waiting for the next big thing. And Chase Elliott was basically the heir apparent, and then everyone else is like, "Hi, I'm William Byron," and we're like, "Who are you?" But I'm the face of the 24 car now. Nice to meet you. But we know who he is now. He's a 2-time Daytona 500 winner, and a lot of Ryan Blaney made a good name for himself there, coming out of the Wood Brothers his rookie year and winning at Pocono, and the rest is history. Now he's one of the top in sales there in the merchandise haulers, sitting at number 6. But yeah, it is a big problem to have some of those there. But at the same time, on the positive side, it is good to see names like Daniel Suarez, Tyler Red. Daniel Suarez has his amigos. That they gotta be high up there on that list. And then it's good to see ones like Tyler Reddick, to me, and Ross Chastain gain following. That shows to me that it's a little healthier than we might be leading it on to be. When I don't know, maybe I don't want to call them secondary names, but didn't have air. Well, you know what I mean? Like they didn't have heirs. They didn't have, their dad didn't race, and now they're here. Like they came through, and Chastain being from the watermelon generations, a family member generations in Alva, Florida. That to see him do so well in merchandise sales, is a very healthy sign for me. So a little bit on both sides there on this.
Yeah, so I obviously see Junior being at 8th, Dale Senior being at 10th. I don't really have a problem with either of that, to be honest with you. I know that might sound a bit contrarian, but listen, Dale Earnhardt is ubiquitous to the sport of NASCAR, and he always will be. It's just how it's going to be until the end of time, until the sport ceases to exist. Dale Earnhardt was a NASCAR driver, and to a lot of people, was probably the best. His son was probably the most popular NASCAR driver that's ever existed, and he still has a super active platform within the sport as an Xfinity Series team owner, as a broadcaster, as a podcaster, and he's still running late models. So, like, to some extent, I get why they'd be. Yeah, see, Ben, you're part of the problem.
and he has a few more Xfinity starts left in him. He said in the media center.
He dropped that bomb too this weekend.
Yeah. Which he even acknowledged when he threw that out there that it would be something that he'd probably miss and inevitably want to do again. So, I don't really feel like that's that big of an issue. And as far as Allgaier is concerned, being, among this list, we also have to consider that, this is part of a year where Allgaier started the year with a Daytona 500 entry and sold an exceptional amount of Cup stuff that is still being bought. In fact, I went to my local short track, and I can't tell you how many Travelers Whiskey shirts that I saw with the number 40 on it. Mm-hmm. So with that said, I have a feeling that Allgaier's bump has to be in part not only because he's part of Dale Jr.'s team, but because he is the defending Xfinity Series champion, and he ran in the Daytona 500 in a highly publicized entry for Dale Jr. So
and did well.
Yeah. Very well, finished 9th. So, you look at the other names on this list. I mean, the top 7 are current drivers, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of – wait, I might be miscounting. 1, 2.
The NASCAR brand is number 1, so I guess that's just generic NASCAR merch. So it's 6 drivers, and then Junior, Allgaier, Senior, 5 more Cup drivers after them.
Everybody but Ross here in the top 6 is a champion of the sport in the highest division. And Ross has been a big contender for the title in several years among several series and has a very definitive brand from his one extremely viral moment. Plus his celebration is, rife for merchandise sales as well. So I don't really see this as much of a problem, but what I do see as a problem is that we have the top 2 being the 2 top Hendrick cars. Let's call it what it is. Alex Bowman's nowhere on this list. William Byron is super low compared to someone like Ross, who has less wins, less accolades than him. Obviously, I would have felt like Daniel Suarez and Bubba Wallace probably would have been a bit higher, but I'm encouraged to see that Christopher Bell is rising, Denny Hamlin as well. I feel like until 2017, Denny Hamlin hadn't really done anything to ruffle feathers or really make people feel one way or the other about him. And then Martinsville came along and he quit.
He ripped that apart.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He kind of tore his way out of being kind of in the fans center ground. He was kind of a neutral person to fans. So yeah, I guess, kind of taking a look at, who all consists of the top 14, because that's what's being shown here. We're not going to talk about the NASCAR brand as part of this, but I'm more encouraged by it because I would have felt like even Jeff Gordon or Richard Petty would have populated somewhere in here, Jimmy Johnson. But no, I mean, like I said, at the end of the day, the Earnhardt name is kind of ubiquitous when it comes to the sport of NASCAR, and I just don't feel like they're ever going to completely trickle out of this because the 3 means something to people. You'd go 3 for Dale, you raise hell, or you praise Dale, you raise hell and praise Dale, he is just somebody that is always going to be part of what we do, no matter how far divorced we are from his time in the sport. So like, while it's not great that former drivers are populating in the top 10 of sales, at the same time, you kind of have to weigh it a certain way because of who they were and what they meant to the sport. And yeah, the day that Dale Earnhardt Jr. or Dale Earnhardt Sr. are not part of that list is the day that I'm probably going to be a little bit more concerned about the future of the sport and what its merch sales look like, because I could get into a whole thing about how Fanatics is part of the problem here.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to go there because
Wow.
it's really going to extend the length of this show. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at the fact that we have so many current Cup guys that are in the top 15. I think that's a really promising sign, and it could be a lot worse with like Gordon merch, Richard Petty merch, Jimmy Johnson merch, etc., still being pressed and released now, especially with brands like Home Field doing collaborations with certain teams and revitalizing their kind of like legacy products. Like Hendrick has Tim Richmond like as kind of like part of their line, and I've seen some of Tim Richmond's stuff still sold at the races. So
Davey Allison too has some
Davey,
classic stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So like I feel like it could be a lot worse. And maybe that might not be the right approach, but at the same time, like I wouldn't get too concerned. Like I would have thought that Christopher Bell wouldn't have been on this list because I just don't really see a whole lot of his merch at the track, but I haven't been to the track this year, so maybe that's changed.
I'm going to pull a Kyle Petty here, and let me just say this.
All right.
Okay, now that I've said that, I think maybe to speak more towards Matthew's point of he has the problem with the Earnhardt name having so much of a stranglehold, maybe give it, I think maybe more decades away, we might not be having the same problem. I mean, it still is pretty recent, the whole Earnhardt saga being over for Dale Sr. and Dale Jr.'s legacy. Just finished full-time racing in 2017 from the Cup level. It's still pretty fresh on folks' mind. Now, when I think of someone like Richard Petty, and I'd look around a sample size of the grandstands, I'm not seeing a bunch of Richard Petty gear, like people all decked out in Richard Petty gear. Now, sure, he's around. We're celebrating the anniversaries of Petty Enterprises and this and that, but I don't see a problem with people still just the King Richard Petty till the day I die sort of folks. Like those people have, well, let's be real, they're not with us anymore. I mean, as the decades go on, I feel like the quote unquote stranglehold that we feel with the Earnhardt saga is going to fade a little bit. Well, and someone else will take its place. There might be a Busch saga with Kyle and Brexton. There might be a Kevin and Keelan.
Yeah, especially after this weekend.
Yeah, he's up and coming for sure.
Yeah, well, and to your point, Brandon, there's a lot of layers to what Matthew tweeted. And I guess like I understand the point that he's trying to make, and I agree with it to an extent. If Dale Jr. was still number one, for example, or if he were top 3 or even top 5, I would think it would be a little more cause for concern. But to Tanner's point, I'm encouraged to see a lot of those drivers up there. I think it means that it's moving kind of in the right direction, so to speak. I will, on that note, Brandon, point out you can check out who finished 19th in the Xfinity race. Jeffrey is still out there, so it's not like the Earnhardt name has completely disappeared from this sport. And who knows if his girls are going to want to race? That's a conversation for well down the line here.
That's a really good finish for him, by the way. I completely missed that he finished that well. Awesome job.
Yeah, he's hanging in there with the opportunities he's getting. But
also, he had the dog whisperer with him as a special guest. He had
Caesar Milan.
Caesar was
my God.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was like, there he is.
There you go.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Well, just and to the comparison that Matthew made, because I love making stick and ball sports comparisons when it comes to this sport, right? But I told him this. I think it is a little apples and oranges here, because when you think about NASCAR Cup, there's 34 usually. There's a couple of charter teams I feel like that usually run a rotation of drivers, but 34 to 36 full-time Cup Series names that you're buying merchandise for, and that's it. Whereas if you go to Major League Baseball, you have a whole 40-man roster and you've got 30 teams, and it's even bigger in a sport like the NFL. And even in the NBA, you know, there's 30 teams with 15 guys, there's 450 jerseys to choose from. And, you know, there's a lot more competition there. I think it's a lot harder for, say, Michael Jordan to be top 10 in jersey sales, for example. But the thing in NASCAR is you also have individualized hats and die casts, like I just mentioned. And this is another part of it too. I mean, Junior is still racing to an extent. So like Tanner said, I am part of the problem here.
And the Budweiser deal the Anheuser-Busch deal has been revived with the late model action. So
yeah, and Kevin's still getting die casts out there with the one-offs he's doing in the Cars Tour as well. So it's, again, I don't think it's just a Dale Earnhardt Jr. thing. Obviously, Junior has the largest fan base still collectively, and that's why he's so high on that list. But does Justin Allgaier driving for Junior Motorsports give him a little bit of a boost? I'm sure it does. But I also think, you know, to Tanner's point, I don't know if Allgaier would have cracked the top 10 this year had he not run the Daytona 500 and done quite well in it, to Brandon's point, and had he not been the defending Xfinity Series champion. I think if there was ever a year for Allgaier to be ranked this high, the time is now, so to speak. So again, if he were higher on this list, and also if these were, like, I'll just, you know, no disrespect, but I'll throw Frankie Muniz's name out there. If Frankie Muniz was top 10 in NASCAR merchandise sales, with how much he has struggled in the Truck Series this year, I know he's driving for a smaller team and is a little bit down on experience, and certainly has had his fair share of bad luck. But if that were the situation, like, Frankie Muniz is a big name because he's an actor, right? He's an A-list celebrity to many people, and they see that he's running NASCAR and they're flocking to buy his merch and rep him, you know, in terms of a fashion trend or whatever, and that leads him to outsell Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson in merchandise. Then I think we have a bit of a problem. What does that say about where NASCAR is, you know, in terms of pop culture, where it ranks in the eyes of a lot of people there? But Dale Earnhardt Jr. being the seventh best selling driver when it comes to merchandise, I think, you know, to the points that both of you made, if anything, I'm a little surprised that it's not higher. And I think it is good for the sport that it seems to be trending in that direction, where the younger drivers, who we've been saying for years, like, they lack the personality, they're not as outgoing, they don't do as much media like the drivers of the 90s or 2000s did. When are they going to achieve that household name sports superstar status? Maybe this is a sign that things are trending more towards that direction than they were 5 years ago. And I can only come away with positive thoughts on the back end of that.
Well, just you wait till Cletus McFarlane gets this first Dodge Ram deal for 2026.
That could open up a whole can of worms there as well.
Look at your list after that, and we'll see.
We'll keep an eye on that.
He might be the first truck driver I've seen in the last 6 years to actually have merch at the track. So that would be something. And to kind of bounce off of something Ben said earlier, it's not actually 36 drivers that have their merch at the tracks. I can personally tell you, I've been to the track every year for the last 6 years. Teams I have never seen merch for: JTG/Hayek, Spire, any of the rides that Corey LaJoie has been in, whether it be with Rick Ware, Spire, Go Fast before that, like the Timmy Hill MBM Garage 66 team, they never have anything. Like a lot of teams, Colleague hardly ever has anything at the track. Like a lot of these teams, like some of the smaller ones, they really just don't have the budget. Maybe they don't have the deal with fanatics necessary to push product out. I don't know what it is, but really we're talking about closer to 20 to 25 guys that have their stuff at the track, and some assorted Xfinity Series stuff. And that's still, again, with mostly the big teams that have an offshoot, like JRM to Hendrick, JGR's Xfinity team, Haas factory team having, you know, the Ford outfit basically. And the trucks, they don't have anything. So frankly, I'm just really impressed that someone like Justin Allgaier is even touching this list, because it is so rare to see any of their merch at the track to be bought that I didn't even think it was possible for this to happen. But again, the factors that we listed earlier, the fact that he was in the 500 and ran well, raced his way in there. Not only that, you have him winning the Xfinity Series championship last year and his car owner being the biggest name in the sport over the last quarter century. It's a absolutely perfect formula for him to bounce back into the top 10 here. So, yeah, it's just one of those things where it's like these merch sales, like I don't even know if they're like a real definitive like way to explain a driver's popularity or not. So I guess I'll just leave it at that. But I don't really think the Earnhardt name is something that really has like a stranglehold over fans. It's just, it's part of who we are. Like Dale Earnhardt and Richard Petty, like you said, Brandon, Richard Petty's name and his likeness have kind of faded away as some of those fans that were around for his time have kind of faded out, whether it be one reason or another. So yeah, I just feel like eventually we'll move away from, talking about the Earnhardts and move on to whoever is the next legacy team, next legacy family in this sport.
Yeah, I just think we're not far away enough yet. And I really think those things take not years, but decades to run their course. I think we're still feeling those the shock waves and aftermath. And if nothing else tells you, just look at this brand new Earnhardt documentary that
literally
is just, is the best one we've ever had.
Yeah. And just one final point, I think, again, our sport is very unique. And, obviously, if you want to compare it to AAA baseball in terms of where it ranks on the ladder, trying to work your way up to the top series, then that's fine, I think. But the Xfinity Series this year, especially on the CW, it's on network TV every week. I think, objectively speaking, gets more coverage than any AAA baseball team that I can think of. The only way that I could see a AAA baseball player breaking into the top 10 is if maybe Tim Tebow were still playing. If it would take a figure like that, and even then, I don't know if Tebow ever got that high in terms of jersey sales for the Mets affiliates that he was playing with. So we'll leave it there. Obviously, much more to this conversation. I'm sure we'll continue to follow up on it as the year goes on, depending on how Allgaier performs.